Hello and welcome to the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, registered dietitian, running coach, marathon runner, and mom. This season, we're breaking down running's biggest trends, hot topics, and myths, and turning them into practical nutrition and training advice you can actually use every day. Let's get into it. Hey runners, before we get into today's episode, I want to ask you a quick question. Have you ever wondered if your nutrition is actually helping your running, or is it actually holding you back? If you want to find out, I've created a brand new free resource just for you. It's called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a super quick checklist that's going to help you spot the signs of underfueling, low energy availability, or where the gaps in your nutrition might be that are impacting your recovery and actually slowing you down. It only takes a few minutes to go through, and by the end, you're going to know whether or not your fueling is on the right track, or if you really need to start making some changes to the way you approach your eating so you can start to feel stronger on every run, reduce your injury risk, and actually get the results that you're training so hard for. You can grab your free copy right now by clicking on the link in the show notes. Again, this is called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a free downloadable resource, and it's going to give you so much clarity on how you can start feeling smarter and running stronger. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I am excited today to chat a little bit about when and how, but a lot of when, and looking at the timeline of how to start training your gut for race day. And so this is a very timely topic to be covering just at the beginning of summer. Everyone is training, just starting to train for those fall races. You know, we're still quite a few weeks away from, your fall, half, full, ultras, all of those things. And, I'm talking to a lot of runners and hearing from a lot of runners who are like just starting to think about starting a training plan and, just kind of like looking at options and getting ready to start. And so this is the perfect timing for this episode because this episode is all about when to start training your gut and when to start practicing and getting into a groove with your fueling strategy, because the key takeaway, the key thing that I want you to remember from this episode is that your fueling should start the same time you start your training plan. I mean, before is fine too, like depending on how much you're running before you actually start the, full on training plan for your race. But, you're signed up for your next half or full marathon. Maybe you're doing an ultra race and you've had some bad fueling experiences in the past. So you are a runner who has had a bad race. You've not fueled well, you have hit the wall, maybe you DNF'd, maybe you got so dehydrated that you were a mess, you were cramping, you were walking, you were exhausted. You just had like a really rough race day. And maybe even going back into your training cycle, you had a really rough training cycle because your fueling and your hydration were just not at top of mind, right? Or you didn't know what to do with your fueling and your hydration. And so maybe the training cycle wasn't that great. You had a lot of really rough long runs that you weren't feeling confident in. And then sure enough, on race day, things kind of fell apart and you have vowed that this time around, it's going to be different. You are going to show up to your race prepared and confident. You want to have a fueling and hydration strategy that you feel good about. You are committed to practicing your fueling in training. You are going to carb load this time. You are going to really nail it. And you're going to execute that plan flawlessly on race day, right? Whether or not that is realistic, totally other situation. But I think going into it with a good plan, a solid strategy that you feel good about is number one. Whether or not that shakes out on race day, I mean, as we all know, these races owe us nothing. And so you just don't know what's going to happen on race day. But what you do want is to show up and have a pretty good idea of what you're going to do and how it's going to go and what your plan and strategy is going to be. So if you are listening to this episode because you had a bad race this last time around and you want to do things differently this time, but you don't know where to start, then that is why I want to get into this episode today, is like where to start, what to do, how do we approach training our gut so that we can get to race day and be really prepared. So the overarching theme of like the advice that you hear and see, and like I say this too, so this is not like that this is bad advice or wrong or anything, but it's you have to find what works for you and you have to try different things and see what you like best, right? Fine advice. I say this to people, the issue is not with the advice, but the issue is like, okay, but how? But what? Where do I start? And so that's what I want to break down in today's episode. So the first thing that I will say is your fueling practice and your gut training should start the same time that your training plan for that race starts. That is a minimum of 12 weeks. Most gut training protocols, like the ones that you would see used in sport nutrition research, is a minimum of 12 weeks. So don't wait until you need to fuel. Like don't wait until your long runs are getting into that like hour and a half, 2 hour mark or longer to start thinking about fueling. Like if you're training for a half marathon, you don't have that many training runs that are going to be that long. So waiting until you need to fuel is going to put you at a disadvantage, and you probably will find that your gut training just doesn't go as smoothly and you're just not as prepared for race day as you would like to be. So give yourself at least 12 weeks to train your gut if you're starting from like essentially nothing. If you just want a better fueling plan, but you fueled well in recent races, maybe you can tolerate food and fluids, you just need to like figure out a couple of other things, then okay, maybe you don't need to, but I would still think about fueling as a very key part of this whole training and this whole process, right? The other thing that you want to think about with like setting the stage is your race day logistics, right? Are you going to be running in the heat? Are you going to be running closer to the end of the year when it's likely to be cooler in a lot of environments? Like I know that again, weather, nothing is ever guaranteed, but what's sort of the average temperatures, or what are you kind of looking at with weather to know if fluid intake is going to be like really, really key for a hot race, or maybe, fueling. You want to look at different options and different products with the race day logistics. The other thing is going to be what sort of aid station support is there going to be? Again, from like a road race to a trail race, there can be vast differences in what the aid stations, like the frequency and the availability of what is at aid stations. Also, depending on the size of the race, right? Much larger races tend to have more frequent aid stations, maybe sponsorship from different nutrition companies where there might be like gels or chews or sports drinks also on the race course. Smaller races might just have water. So you want to know, like, what can I rely on from the aid stations, or what can I expect to have from the aid stations, and what maybe do I need to bring myself? It just helps planning so you have a better sense of what products you might want to use. And of course, if, like I'll just give an example, the half marathon that I'm running in just a few weeks, they are sponsored by a brand that has like fruit bar chew things, Exact Nutrition. They're a Canadian company, and I like their fruit bars. They're very good. So I'll definitely be taking one of those out on the race course when I come across that aid station. But that would be something that you're like, okay, if they're going to be handing out this brand of product at these different aid stations, I want to make sure perhaps that I have practiced with those in training so that I can grab one and have that incorporated into my fueling strategy. Or you might want to just take some things along the race course and you can use them the next time around, right? When I was in New York, there was people handing out different, all kinds of different things on the race course. And I took some things and I'll use them for a training run another day if it's a product that I'm not familiar with. Other people, they know they have a solid iron gut. They'll take everything and anything. If people are handing out snacks on the race course, they're having it. They know that they'll be fine. So you know yourself best. The other key with gut training, and the reason why we give this at least 12 weeks lead up, is because we want to start small and go slow, right? Gut training is not a freight train coming for your stomach where you just start taking full gels every 20 minutes, drinking sports drinks, the highest carb amount sports drinks that you can find. Like, we are not just going all in on 90 grams of carbs an hour day one, right? Of course, we're going to have problems, very likely to have problems if we are consuming that much. So instead, we're starting small and we're going slow, right? We're taking maybe a quarter of a gel, one chew, or half a gel, or just a sip of a sports drink, right? Every 30 minutes or so, and then working our way up over those 12 plus weeks to whatever our hourly carb goal might be, whether that's 60 grams, 90 grams, or something beyond that, right? So we are starting really small, really slow, right? Barely noticeable. That's the key. Barely noticeable, right? And over the weeks, it's just a little more, a little more, a little more, building our tolerance and building our consistency until reaching that hourly carb target is no problem for us, right? In some situations, we might even want to train beyond what we plan to do on race day so that we are like extra gut trained so that if, taking it a little bit less, we know that that's going to be not an issue. The other thing I want to say is like, don't just sort of one and done um, different products if you don't happen to have a great run on that particular day. There's a lot of stuff that can go into how our gut feels on any given day. So, like trying something, having a little bit of it one time, not having your best run, and then saying, okay, well, that doesn't work for me, or like that whole category of products doesn't work for me. I would give it, a couple of tries just to see, right? Like I've had products where I've been drinking something and I end up, needing a bathroom stop, an extra bathroom stop or something like that during a run. I'm not going to assume that it was the product that I was taking that day. Like there's a lot of reasons why you might all of a sudden have like a mid-run bathroom stop, right? It would be that if it was a pattern that every single time I use this same product, I end up having issues, then yeah, I would say after like two or three not so great experiences, then it would be time to move on. But this is also why I always suggest fueling not just our longest long runs and even only our once per week long run. I actually really think it's a strength when you're gut training to also fuel some of our midweek runs. Our speed sessions it's great if you can practice fueling when you're doing a speed workout. If you have a kind of midweek longer easy run, like not another long run, but one that's like a little bit shorter, I love those for fueling as well because you get like more opportunities to try different things in a lower pressure setting where you aren't necessarily risking a key workout or a key long run if you do end up having to stop, or if your gut is a little bit off, maybe you can't hit your goal paces for a long run workout because your stomach is just unsettled, right? Like you don't always want to risk that. And so if you've done more fueling more frequently during the week, then you maybe have tried something two or three times before that long run. And then it's like, okay, I feel good about this, or maybe you know what, this whole week I was having issues, so I'm not going to have that for this weekend, right? It just gives you more information to make better quality decisions. The other thing that we want to do is keep our product choices to like just one or two at the most at a time in a run, at least until we're really confident in our gut tolerance and in the different products that we can choose. So, like, I had a runner once a few years ago who came to work with me specifically because she had a lot of GI issues. Now, this is not an uncommon story. I work with a ton of runners who their main reason for reaching out to work with me is because they want to solve their GI issues. But this runner in particular, I remember her story well because when we looked at what she was taking in, she was using like so many different things on a long run. And she was training for a marathon. And so there was a lot of fuel that she was taking in, but it was like a little of this, a little of that, one of these, one of that. Like the variety of products that she was taking was just so many things. And that was my first step with her, was to say, okay, let's choose one or two. And that's what you're going to use for like this run or for this week, because I want to see like if there is something that is bothering your stomach, how are we ever going to know what it is if you're taking all of these different things? Like we're never going to know what the culprit was because it's just too much different stuff, right? If there's an ingredient that you don't tolerate, or there's like a certain thing that you don't tolerate, it's so hard to tease that apart when there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. So if you can kind of streamline it down to just one or two products, then you know, is this working for me or isn't it? It isn't just like a total toss up of what maybe triggered some GI distress. So then by the time we get into our final 2 or 3 long runs, this is when we really want this to be like a dress rehearsal for our final fueling and hydration plan, including that carb load. Now, along the way, gut training also includes working in a carb load, because carb loading is not something that we want to do for the very first time during race week, right? It's a big shift in what we're taking in, maybe the types of foods, right? Like carb loading can be quite different than our typical day-to-day diet, right? And so over the weeks of training, as your long runs get longer, we start to incorporate more carbs into the day before your long run. Now, you're not doing like a full 2 or 3 day carb load every single week, but the day before, maybe your baseline carbohydrate intake is 200 grams of carbs a day, right? Starting out from your off season. And then we want to bump that up to like 250 and then 300, 350, right? Working your way up over the weeks slowly. It doesn't have to be an increase every single week, but we're slowly working up that carb intake the day before the long run as the long run duration builds until for the day before your long run, when you get into those last like 2 or 3, you're basically doing a full 1 day carb load the day prior, right? So then when we get to race week, everything is already set, right? We know what and how much we're going to eat in the days leading up. We know what and how much we're going to take during our race, right? We've had that dress rehearsal. We've had that time to trial and error some things. We're then getting to the start line, feeling very confident and feeling very prepared in what we're going to do. Is it a guarantee that everything is going to work out and it's going to be a perfect, wonderful day? Of course not, right? But we are dramatically increasing our chances of not hitting the wall, of having a stronger finish, better energy levels, fewer GI issues, less risks of dehydration, if all of these pieces are in place as we go through that training cycle. What I see far too often are runners who get to the final couple of weeks, right? That crunch time, these last 2 or 3 long runs, then they're starting to think about their fueling and their hydration. And it's great that they're not thinking about it like literally during race week, but it's hard to cram all of this into just a couple weeks of training and then your taper, right? So if we can start sooner, think about this earlier, that gives us a much better chance of actually getting some good information, really getting an opportunity to try some different things, figuring out what we like, figuring out what works, thinking about logistics, doing the actual gut training, building up our tolerance for food and fluids, and then having a very successful race day performance. All right, so that is the steps, some things to think about, how we go about training our gut, what it all kind of looks like. If you need help with this, if you are the runner that I described at the beginning of the episode who has had a bad race experience, you know that your hydration and your fueling was what impacted you, like you know that that was the issue, and that's something that you really want to work on this time around. You have a race coming up for this fall or maybe throughout the summer. Not to say that if you are closer than 12 weeks to your race, then you can't or shouldn't think about your nutrition. But, you know, if your race still feels really far away, then I don't want you to not think about this until it is too late. If your race is already getting closer, then of course now is the time to take action and make sure that you're giving yourself your best chance at having a really solid day. So, of course, I offer this kind of help to runners who are looking for nutrition guidance in my Fueled Runner program. So this is an 8-week program where we go through all of the aspects of basically what to eat when to support better performance and body composition. So we cover gut training, we cover pre, post, intra-run fueling, we cover your day-to-day nutrition, how to juggle it all with body composition changes, hydration and electrolytes, carb loading, right? Like everything you need to know to have this really comprehensive, personalized nutrition strategy we cover inside the Fueled Runner program. If you're looking for more than just nutrition guidance, if you also are looking for run coaching, then of course, as you know, I am Steph the Runner's dietitian, but I'm also a running coach. And so I have run and nutrition coaching program options as well. You can find all of the details about all the different ways that we can work together at the link in the show notes. And I would love to help you out this season and get you ready for your next race. All right, that is it for this week's episode. I want to thank you again for spending some time with me today and tuning in. We'll catch you back here next week. Bye for now. Podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.